Welcome to the Chamia show, and we're here with my homegirl, Lynette Gibson McElhaney. So, Lynette, before we get started, tell me, what are you reading and what are you listening to?
Oh, that is an awesome question. So I've just finished two beautiful books by B.B. Moore Campbell. 72-Hour Hold, which tells the story of an African-American mother whose daughter manifests bipolar disorder when she's 17, right before she turns 18. And just this one family's struggle, a single mother's struggle to get her daughter support as she is addressing this really significant challenge and the impact of that mental health challenge on the family and the lack of resources and criticism of our existing structures. And even though written like 10 years ago, it's still so very relevant. It's a really wonderful read about humanity and compassion and family and love with a family that's mentally ill. And then the second B.B. Moore Campbell that I read was What You Owe Me, which tells the story of an African-American woman, Southern migrant who goes to Los Angeles and ends up, through circumstances, starting a cosmetics company with a Holocaust survivor. The two women were working as maids when the Holocaust survivor's family had been in Poland making cosmetics, so she knew how to make lotions.
Wow.
And the story is told that black women didn't have access to lotions. They were using Vaseline and lard. And so the African-American woman says, well, this would be great. We can sell these to black women and have them look beautiful. They start a cosmetics company, and then through a series of circumstances, the Jewish woman separates, leaves this woman holding the bag for the company, but then goes on to be a huge international cosmetic firm.
Wow.
And so this is it's a beautiful story of forgiveness, family, redemption, reparations, as BB does to get us to see the humanity, the compassion, and the betrayal on all sides. So telling
Don't give us too much, though. Go read it.
What BB does so I think so beautifully for African Americans is to weave in our story and our history, even with the characters or the analogies that she uses. And so in both of these stories, there's a bit of the California African American experience, the Southern migrant story, and how we arrived. So both of those have been fantastic, and I read them over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, I have to check those out. It's been a while since I've read BB. What are you listening to?
Besides the news every day. I have been mostly listening to some jazz pieces, and my son has reawakened me to Sarah Vaughan. So we've been doing some work around Sarah's work, and so listening to that. And I'm into radio stories, and so the new hottest craze in the country is Serial, which is a spinoff from This American Life. And we are now following the story of a man who says he was wrongly convicted of murdering his girlfriend. He was arrested as a 17-year-old.
Wow.
And so we don't know where the story's going, but it is every week, and I've got to hear the latest chapter. It's out every Thursday.
Awesome.
So I'm listening to Serial.
Awesome.
It's a podcast. So
wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You and I, we go back a little bit. But for those who don't know you or maybe you're less familiar, can you share a little bit about who is Lynette? What's your background, and bring us up to today and kind of your role as Oakland City Councilwoman District 3?
Who was I before that? I mean, the job is so consuming. I had a life. I met you in the capacity of my work in affordable housing, in doing home buyer trainings and workshops and developing communities, mixed income communities. So I continue to be an affordable housing advocate and very passionate about the need for housing and housing support so that we have whole and healthy communities. So Southern California, born and raised, Cal graduate, go Bears, and have dedicated my life to public service. That's how my folks raised me.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you are City Councilwoman, District 3, City of Oakland.
Yeah.
And how far are you in your term? How much longer do you have to go?
So we are just completing the second year of a 4-year term. And so, District 3 is a beautiful collection of neighborhoods that span from the bay to the lake,
Mhm.
from the estuary to the 580. And it is just a wonderful dynamic collection of incomes and ethnicities and family types and religions. And, it's the seat of the, the Oakland Diocese for the Catholic Church. It's the seat of the Office of the President for the University of California. It's the county seat for Alameda County. It's the city seat. District 3 is the Port of Oakland. And all of these neighborhoods are part of North Oakland, West Oakland, Jack London, Adams Point, Pill Hill. So it's awesome. It's awesome to be in a position to serve and advocate for the needs of District 3, but also to represent the city of Oakland on regional bodies and to look at the city as a whole and what it's going to take to make Oakland better.
Wonderful. So we're going to come back and talk a little bit about Oakland and District 3 and what's to come. But want to get your take on a few issues and stories that are happening both locally, nationally, and globally. So first, let's talk about Michael Brown. So Michael Brown is a young man who was murdered in Missouri, and the grand jury in that case is deliberating, or actually they're still hearing testimony, and we're hopeful that they'll make a decision soon. What I want to know from you is, when the shooting happened, when he was killed, had you seen or heard some of the witness testimonies? And the reason why I'm asking is, on YouTube, there's videos from the friend that was with Michael Brown when he was shot. There's one of the eyewitnesses, a young lady who lived in an apartment complex, who said that she saw the whole thing, and some other bystanders. Had you seen or heard any of those firsthand accounts, and how did you feel, or what did you think about that?
Michael Brown is the same age as my son. And Michael, like Trayvon, like Jordan Davis, like Emmett Till, right? Is another example of a tragic loss of precious life of a teenage child in our society, either through vigilante violence or mob violence or police violence. And it's so often perpetrated against African American men, African American boys, and poor people in droves. So the tragic death, the killing of Michael Brown, taps into that hollow place in my soul around the tragic loss of life that we suffer, and the vulnerability of being Black in this society, particularly Black and male in this society. And my son and I watched the YouTube accounts, and we watched the Twitter accounts, and friends of mine went at their own expense to Ferguson to stand in protest with the Ferguson families. Leaders in District 3 have hosted Ferguson families here, have brought the relatives of Michael Brown here to give testimony. They've eaten at our restaurants and have been held by our community. So Ferguson is not that far away. We've had young men killed under suspicious circumstances by police here in the Bay Area. Latino boys and Black boys. And
so let me ask you this. As a mother to a young Black man, with seeing Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin, what did you say to your son? Did you caution him in terms of interactions with law enforcement, in terms of congregating with
my child was
a group of
born
friends?
being cautioned. Right? He's never had the privilege of being in this society and feeling free. What I discussed with my son was his rage and his fear, his caution, and his desire to leave this country. And my desire for him to never become so afraid that he's immobilized and so bitter that he's poisoned.
So with President Barack Obama in the White House and having the first family, a group of African Americans in the White House, there's a thought that with the election and the re-election of the president, that racism has been solved.
Who thought that? Black folks did not think that. Latinos and Asians did not think
right.
that. Right?
So,
I mean, I don't think any real thinking people thought that. I think that we all celebrated that this was a milestone that allowed many, many, many white voters to cast a decisive ballot in electing the first black male to ascend to that office. But I don't think anybody of real consciousness, I'm not talking about the folks that you can find to give a line on television. I don't think anybody thought that America's racism was over. We continue to live in a society that tolerates the mass incarceration of black and brown people. We continue to live in a society where there's such disparity in terms of health outcomes, education outcomes, employment outcomes, life expectancy for black and brown people. We continue to see glass ceilings for women and poor people, right? When you chop all of that up, I don't think that anybody, not really, seriously thought that we were in an era where racism was no longer present. I think